All right, good evening, folks. We're going to open up tonight's meeting at 2 p.m. 4 members absent. White is not. First item on the agenda, public comments for items not on the agenda for discussion, not action. Any such public comment? No. Okay. Second item on the agenda, town reports.
All right, hello, everybody. So we have a couple of different reports to share with you. For new board members, just as a FYI, the first board meeting of the month is typically when, hold on a second, we're not working here with the video. The first meeting of the month is typically when we have all of the different department reports that will be in here. This particular report, which with Jeff taking to have regular reports, and hopefully we will get the reports from the fire department, harbor master, and public works in the future. We've had some shift in employees, so it's resulted in us being a little delayed with some of those monthly reports. One monthly report that we'll also receive is from the code enforcement officer. I did receive, and we put on the town website under code enforcement, all of the permits to date that have been issued or pending. So if you are interested in seeing what that list is on the town website under code enforcement, that document is there. So as far as the TA report, a number of different things that I would like to just update you and let me know after each one ends to Chandler's Cove work. So in the spring, and DOT was here to discuss about the expected work that they will be doing down there because it is a state-owned pier. And it is being maintained by DOT. There were several questions raised. One was raised in particular by fishermen, asking if there could be an opportunity to have a hoist set up to allow them to have better access and ability to move that they're not able to accommodate that in the costs from their end, but for flow piles that could be replaced, that about it, to put it on a next agenda item or a future agenda item for a decision to be made and determine if and how many funds you would want to appropriate for this particular project. Any questions?
Sure.
So at that meeting, I first one, they said like 20,000 for voice.
Well, in
Right,
the email, it's 100.
I'm just wondering, you know, why it's such a, they did say why.
Yeah, so the one fellow just provided a number off the top of his head. And it was based on a project several years before. The number they're coming up with here
Is 100,000 for the post?
100,000, but it's a more complex design than our fishermen were envisioning. And our fishermen come back with, we did one for 15,000 back when we had the lobster company down at the commercial wharf. And so there's work to be done there, I think, to specify what it is we really want and then figure out how to pay for it. And I think one approach might be that we ask them for permission to install ourselves as opposed to having them do it. So I have one other question, that's Carol. He doesn't in this letter refer to the concept of us transferring ocean ownership of those islands and ideally the floats to them, those things that are currently ours, but we did talk about that in that meeting.
No, I have this one, but I agree.
I didn't elaborate in the conversation with him any further than this. I just told him that I would bring this to the board and then bring any conversation back to them based on how the board felt. From the response, if you wanted to proceed, if you wanted to explore the ideas a little bit more. The one thing that was mentioned in the email is the fact that he spoke to Chris Mayo, who seemed to feel that the town would be able to get a grant to cover some of this. And once again, I didn't want to dig into that without the board supporting that, and wanted to make sure that the board was behind this project. So if
Yeah, I think that, maybe we should refer it to coastal waters, have them come back with a formal recommendation. And if they have an alternative approach that's less expensive, great, they can suggest that. But, I wouldn't suggest we install it. I think it's more of just, let's make sure the equipment is not more than what we need. But, I think coastal waters, Justin was there, and some of coastal waters members were there, so I think that would be the way to go, and formally say, come back with a recommendation. Because that's kind of in their purview.
We need a motion to that effect, or the sense of the board?
there is no motion, I think if the board is kind of in agreement to that, I think that that is in their purview of work, and that would be the perfect board to run with this and then bring a recommendation to the select board instead of select board doing all of the legwork and the research behind it.
And maybe what we should do is give them a date, which back in the spot. I think that would be helpful for them.
Sense of the board?
Yeah, this is the only, there's no other option on the island right now for fishermen, is that correct? There's no other left,
There's no other list yet.
right, so it seems.
We've never had a trap with them.
I wonder why, I mean, it seems like that's something that seems common on other waterfronts that handle fishing.
So
Do we have a sense of the number of people who are fishermen who have made this request?
there were several fishermen that had come to the meeting and had proposed this idea to DOT, which resulted in this email, and that's.
Seems like that would be really helpful data for the grant application forward.
2 or 3 for sure that would use it. And it was close, the competition with local waters, but what if we ask the town administrator to go back to coastal waters and ask them to come back with recommendations by our August meeting, our first August meeting? Does that make sense?
I think that's reasonable because they're gonna be going out to bid in September, so I think they need to know what level of involvement the town wants to be in to have an idea whether this is going to be something that they wanna include in the initial funding.
And Mike, can you have a comment? Okay. After you meet the rights, you can go on with the reports.
All right, the next thing is a dredging update. So I attached an email from Jordan Macy, who is the individual that is leading this project. At this point, the town is waiting from Army Corps to settle the first issue that we ran into with the original engineering firm going out. After they completed the work, they submitted a damages assessment for $800,000. And so Army Corps has been going back and forth to settle that with them. Army Corps has proposed $158,000 settlement. The town would be responsible for 20% of that cost. If accepted, then the cost would be about $31,000. Eelgrass mitigation is still another thing that's still not resolved. There have been couple attempts of them planting in other areas were unsuccessful. And so now they're trying to work out a deal where a payment essentially is made instead of waiting for eelgrass to grow in areas. There is currently $130,000 in the dredging reserve account. The idea is that that money will cover any of the payments that would need to be appropriated by the town. But once again, until it's settled, we're not quite sure what that number is gonna be. So for now, that money is just sitting there and we're waiting for them to battle it out before we know what our expense is going to be. The next thing is gonna be survey work. So the work down here by the store, survey work has been done. The attorney has looked at that paperwork. There's a little bit more that the surveyor needs to do before we're then able to draft up easement agreements that will ultimately go to town vote. Upon approval, a culverts would be put in to fix when you think of lots of water or rain, there's a big puddle kind of right in the middle or to the edge of the road to fix that. So that's one of the things that we've had the survey work done. South Shore Drive, East Shore Drive are other areas where we had looked for quotes. South Shore Drive, they did the initial work for the survey work. They've also been down on Jenks Road to do work there. Jenks and East Shore Drive, I don't have a time of estimate of when those will be complete. South Shore Drive, when he returns from vacation on the 8th, he should have follow-up information for us to share with that, at which point I will be able to bring that to the board for approval and to proceed with what the next steps would be in terms of the work on South Shore Drive. Any questions there?
Going back to the grant. In a brief summary, can you explain what the damages are for?
So Burnham was the original company, was the first company that did the dredging. They were here for a number of weeks. The dredging was not complete to the full capacity. There was 11% of dredging that still needed to be done. They presented several arguments that prevented them from being able to do that. But in addition to that, they put in a claim with Army Corps stating that they were essentially at a loss of X amount of dollars due to not being able to complete the project and weather and a variety of other reasons that they had. And that is what Army Corps is arguing with them. They've had to do data collection for weather and tides, and the harbor master has had to provide several documentations in terms of when they were here, when they weren't here. So it's been a lengthy process for Army Corps to deal with the first dredging company that was
So it's
here.
not physical damages, it's contractual damages in the context of the world of government contracts, which, having now been through this process for a couple of years, is somewhat frustrating, but it's the way the government contract works.
And future granting was maybe.
Future dredging is on them.
Yeah.
All future dredging is still here, and I'll pay by the end of the.
100%. Once we're done with this contract, that particular, so there's 8 feet and 10 feet sections where the boat comes in and then where the barge comes in, that will be entirely covered by Army Corps. So,
They-
Back to the survey work. What's the issue on Jason?
so Jenks Road is something that I brought to your attention probably a couple of months ago, and the board agreed to proceed with having a survey done of the road in order to determine the town boundaries, so then the town can start figuring out and determining where there could be a proper and appropriate parking for the shore, seeing as that the current parking is on private property and it's now been completely washed away. The consensus was with the small committee that has been working on it, that it's probably not wise to throw money into trying to keep that area.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions in terms of the transfer station report that Jeff submitted? This is kind of just an update on the things that he's been working with or the things that have been completed at the transfer station. Later on, we'll have a discussion about the fees.
So Vika, are you gonna go over?
Yeah, he was on the back.
Oh, That's right, that. Yes, sorry, I was looking and mine did have double sided in it, so I forgot this was on here. So back in June, FEMA and NEMA were on the island. We went through several different locations for damages, and we spent quite a bit of time at the town office discussing all of the information. I have a standstill meeting with them every single week, kind of working through gathering information to them. Right now, I have, in the next 2 weeks, I'll be presenting them a lot of the invoices from a lot of the information that we've collected in terms of things that we had to purchase as a result. So at that meeting, the consensus was that the town should really proceed with whatever the work that they feel needs to be done. For example, South Shore Drive being one of the locations, and really not take into consideration FEMA's involvement. And so, we've kind of started some preliminary discussions with, the residents there, and, I think this really puts it into the hands of the town to start having more concrete discussions about what kind of work and what the board would like to see in the future in terms of doing some of the repair work at some of these locations.
I would add, I said it on one of those meetings, you can understand that FEMA's approach is, you may get money from us, but your best way to get money from us is if you go spend it for. And then maybe we'll reimburse you, maybe we won't. That's sort of the approach that I heard. Does that sound like you think that?
Yeah, and one of the biggest things, so last week I had a meeting and the gentleman that I'm dealing with, it's taken a lot of patience, to deal with him. He basically told me last week in our meeting, well, you can just go ahead and start fixing everything. And I kind of had to step back and say, when you were here, you did imply that there is millions of dollars of damage. This community is not in a position to just jump on all of these damages at the same time and fix everything. We don't have that capacity of funds. So we need to logically figure out what has to be done right now and then really plan in more of a long term about doing some of this work. And so just simple discussions like that are really teeth pulling. They're extremely difficult to be dealing with right now.
So 2 questions. On this write-up, you talk about you have material that is available for temporary repair work. Are you planning to go forward with what you have worked on that the town approving?
Yeah, so
Because it was a big plan, then a reduced plan, but you're talking about it in the small.
So the materials were, that have been purchased and are now on the island are for short-term repair for East Shore Drive. It has been, I was there with Public Works and I was there with the code enforcement officer. We went to a couple of the locations to determine what the town crew can and cannot do. The East Shore Drive damage, because of the level of the slope, they are able to do the work themselves and be able to essentially put a large Band-Aid on the problem to slow down the erosion that has taken place until there's a longer solution or a more permanent solution. South Shore Drive is a lot more complicated. It is extremely steep and it's significantly longer. The Public Works crew had attempted several months ago to put some boulders up against one of the locations with the permission from, the code enforcement officer and DEP's knowledge of it, but there's just that we don't have the equipment or the capacity to be able to work on that level of the slope. So that is really more of trying to figure out and involve an engineers in that discussion.
Okay, because I guess I was misunderstood. says, temporary repair work on South Shore Drive, but you're going forward with East Shore Drive. And then we're still kind of in the.
Materials, yes, that's a misprint on my part. Temporary, yes, they've arrived for East Shore Drive.
And then on the repairs that I sort of, we not have a mental list of what we submitted to FEMA, but do you have a set of, have you prioritized them at all so that we can start to kind of think about which ones are most critical to implement? I guess in some ways some are easy, some are complicated, and I think Filter Drive is both, needs to be addressed and complicated.
Yeah.
So it seems like we do need to get moving. on that.
Yeah. And so the hold off on South Shore Drive right now is the survey. We're waiting on the survey to come back, and then once the survey comes back, I will bring that back to the board, and the board can proceed with determining whether you want to go with an engineer design, whether you want to allocate certain amount of funds to hire somebody to work, whether you want to utilize possibly the quotes or the services of the people that some of the residents had brought forth. But the survey is what's really stalling moving forward with that at the moment. With the East Shore Drive, at this point, what's stalling us is the lack of a public works department.
Have you considered outsourcing East Shore?
Yes,
Good.
yes.
I would suggest that from a capability standpoint and from an equipment standpoint, outsourcing might really work well.
Yeah. We're,
Do we have to get a permit for that?
so there is, I don't know the exact language or what the description of it is, but I had worked with Tammy when she was the code enforcement officer, and she had done something in the world of permitting with the code enforcement officer on the state. And so before any work starts, I would have to connect with Paul and get that to make sure that the state is aware and we have the proper
Yeah, so
permission to do that.
it's like current by rule.
It's something like that, but there's a different, there's something different more than a permit. With permit by rule, we received for the temporary repair that the Public Works Department attempted to do initially at South Shore Drive by pulling some boulders. With the repair, there's some other language, but I don't remember exactly what that is. But yes, that is something that would have to be discussed with the code enforcement officer before proceeding.
Yeah, is there been discussion, about having a partnership with the adjacent property owners, especially on South Shore Drive, or they have a extra interest to preserve the road, and they be on. Share,
We'll know more about that after this.
so that's all.
Yeah,
That's
David and Carol were in discussions, and myself, with those property owners when the decision was made that really the next step forward is to determine the property lines, which is where we're at right now, is waiting on that.
Good.
Any other questions?
Somebody may have answered this question already, but is there any thought of looking for access from South Road to people on South Shore Drive?
I think those discussions are too early to really start, but that is a thought of mine.
It was mentioned as a concept at an earlier select board meeting.
What's that?
It was mentioned as a concept at an earlier select board meeting.
All right, any other questions? All right.
We're doing solid waste later, right?
Solid waste is a agenda item for a later discussion for, for fees. So the last report that I have under reports is the treasurer's report. So with this being the first meeting in July, we are now officially in fiscal year 25. On the 28th, I closed out fiscal year 24. I was able to have our bank account is reconciled through June, so we are completely caught up and in a good standing. So in this particular report, I said that I was hoping to get that done. I wasn't sure if it was going to be possible. So at the end of June, the savings account, the reserve accounts were in a little over 1.74 million. The checking account was roughly 1.7 million. One thing to keep in mind is that with the new fiscal year, there was $540,000 of funds that were appropriated by the taxpayers to put into reserve accounts, so that's gonna pump the reserve accounts even more. In addition to that, there was, the school had appropriated, I have the numbers right here, $165,000 from their undesignated fund into reserve accounts. So that's gonna bring the town's reserve accounts up to the $2.46 million mark, which puts the town in a pretty good standing for such a small community with having a large surplus of reserve accounts, especially with all the expenditures that are constantly being thrown at us. The other thing worth mentioning is we did get an increase in terms of percentage, so we are collecting significantly more in interest, which is more than double. So once, in June, it was a little over, almost $6,000 in interest that we collected. Once we add, over $600,000 more, it'll be even more. So those are all positive things in our direction. As far as where the town ended for fiscal year 24, because I was focusing on making sure that everything was set up in the transition from one year to another year, and with finishing the reconciliation, I don't have all of the exact numbers. I do hope to have a more thorough report for you in the next meeting, probably in the August reconciliation. But there are no concerns about going over budget in any other departments other than the anticipated one that we knew about, which was the administrative one, which those funds were appropriated at town meeting. The vote was for $15,000 to cover the cost. I don't anticipate that all of that, if even half, will have to be used, but either way, we're in a good position to be able to have the funds that we need to cover that. With fiscal year 24 expenses still coming in our direction, it is still really difficult to tell what the undesignated fund balance is gonna be, but despite going over in one of the departments and having a couple of departments being a little bit on the tight side, we are anticipating that there is gonna be a decent rollover on undesignated funds from fiscal year 24 into 25 that we'll be able to bring back the undesignated fund balance, having used a good chunk of it, 250,000 for offsetting taxes for fiscal year 25. Any questions?
Questions from the public on the town administrator report, the scheduler's report, or the other department reports? Okay, moving along, first item of regular business is to discuss proposed transfer station fees and future changes at the transfer station and take any necessary action. Either you want to lead that discussion, you want Jeff to lead that discussion?
I'll start and then Jeff can jump in if he has anything else to add. So I did put a memo in here, and so the purpose of this is really to provide a follow-up from the transfer station workshop that we had several weeks ago, just to let the public and the board know that there is some progress, while it might not be visible, that's being made as a result of what was heard at that particular workshop. Jeff and I have met and discussed the fees. We have gone over the fees and we have proposed changes that we hope you can approve, that we can make into effect in the next week or so. The fees did include what we appropriated to be appropriate increases accommodating the barge cost. And Jeff had spent time looking at other towns and what other towns are collecting for these particular products, what it costs this town to pay to dispose of these products, in addition to what the barge costs of that is. And so the fees that are proposed are in consideration with all of that. The one thing to add is, after I had sent this to you, I emailed you something separate a couple of days ago because Jeff had done a little bit more homework and had come up with a couple of other things that he felt would be important to add into the fee schedule, such as paint cans, bicycles, things that he has seen that are commonly coming through that really don't have a price number. There was definitely some feedback from the workshop about being transparent and making sure that everyone is getting charged the consistent rate. And so these would really put us in a position where we are trying to be as transparent as possible to show people that we are charging everybody at the same rate and we're not trying to accommodate anybody. So there are several things in the meantime that we are slowly plugging away and working at. And to have some future improvements at the transfer station, minor improvements is one of the things that we're hoping to do in the fiscal year 25 budget. There was in the facilities reserve account, I had asked the board to appropriate, I believe it was $10,000 to allow that to be an allocation for specific transfer station improvements. The thing that I had in mind was possibly relocating the shed to a better location, so then it's closer towards the entrance. And so Jeff at the moment is working on what the costs of that would be, what the cost of the electrical would be. Not to say those upgrades could or will happen in the next several months, but we are thinking of how that facility could be upgraded in the meantime. Working and implementing per bag fee, that's something that we're still talking about and trying to figure out what the best way to go about and doing that. That's another thing that was a feedback from the workshop. Any questions?
How does moving the building make it more efficient?
So first of all, the building is extremely old and is due for an upgrade. We had a quote. I might be exaggerating, I don't feel like I am, probably 2 years ago from a contractor about, I believe, replacing the roof and the flooring. There is really no floor left in it. And so we thought that with retiring of Gail, that that could, she has very sentimental values to that shed, that maybe getting rid of that shed and upgrade into something a little bit more updated and potentially relocating it closer to the gate so then the attendant can see who comes in and out better, or there's more visibility. I don't know whether it could improve with allowing more space underneath for another container. Those are all things that are possible discussions for the future. But that, one way or another, that shed could use some TLC.
Thank you.
So, has there been any conversation about the sump pump and how to manage that?
There's been lots of conversations about it. No decisions have been made. I think Jeff and I don't want to speak for him, are both in the agreement that there needs to be a fee implemented around it and it needs to be controlled somehow. Because at this point, the town is spending just in having somebody go there and grind everything over $20,000. In the past, we had 2 public works crew that dedicated a whole week helping them. That's an additional cost that wasn't budgeted. Then you're talking about the equipment wear and tear, then you're talking about barging costs. It's in my assumption, it's creeping close to in the $30,000 range of expenditures that the town is not receiving any money for. So yeah, that's definitely a big topic that needs to be addressed in the future that we have yet to figure out a solution for.
It's on the table. So. And my other question has to do with the bag fees, and I know you're discussing it. And I was wondering, is there any decision yet or direction on them?
Well, it's on the second memo.
Yes, I know. It says work is on how to implement.
No, on the additional schedule items that got emailed out, there's 2 different lines for the bag fees.
So I've contacted the Yarmouth Public Works Transfer Station Manager. He's away on vacation. I emailed whatever works, the bag that they use, when they sell Aaron for the garment, I have an email out to them, to find out what their requirements are, how much the bag costs in the municipality. So just getting some feedback as to, okay, if we implement it, how much do we have to buy for this population, where are they sold? The dump need to be hooked up for charging, which, I don't think we can do because our bank account doesn't let us take debit card that dumb. So it's like where the bags gonna be sold, they need to be purchased even when the town office isn't open. So there's a lot of little details, just can't say, okay, we're gonna start. So all those things are in discussion and emails. Yeah.
The only point that I want to make is, the citizen called my attention to the fact that towns that use the paper bag typically are also doing roadside collection of trash. And, if that's, if we're gonna start doing roadside collection, that would be wonderful. But without that, I think the idea of paper bag, is not necessarily consistent with the rest of our system on the island.
I wasn't aware that most towns that have paper bag also have roadside collection. Maybe we need to research that.
Yeah, there is there's actually a app, paper bag. App. And you show how in the state of Maine, they have a paper bag system.
Does it cross-reference? Roadside pickup?
I don't think it does, I have to look at that again. But basically, every town that's gone to it has decreased the transfer station intake between 25 and 30%.
I think that's really the ultimate goal, is to really, when people have to pay for it, to be mindful of what and how much they're disposing. I know that Long Island does the trash pickup. It's something that they inherited from, they were in Portland, and the employees that I've spoken to that work for the town say that it's the biggest nuisance that they deal with. One of them, and so I would highly discourage the town even considering that at this point.
Yeah.
Especially with the lack of staffing, I think that would just add a whole level of expense that we're trying to offset.
Plus we get to see what.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's a list of every town, and most of these are rural, I can't imagine they're having trash pickup in these towns.
Sure, yeah, I'm not really about the food stuff.
Yeah, the wood stuff, I really agree. I think we need to really manage it and really start charging, because it's costing us a lot of money. I will also say, whoever, I don't know if you're at the wildfire talk, but they went out to the wood dump and were kind of horrified.
Yeah.
And, they also, they had a presentation, part of that was about, they had a curtain burner and they thought that could be, so it's basically a very, think of it like a roll-off container, but it has a combustion capability and it burns very, very hot. Does not generate, because it burns so hot, and there's this sort of, barrier of, oxygen air moving across the bottom lines, it doesn't generate a lot of smoke or anything. So they said, they wondered if that might not be a good piece of equipment that even the islands could move on. So anyway, it's, they're looking into it further for us. They had a really big one that they, I showed as examples of from Montana, but there were smaller ones. So anyway, we'll keep you in the loop, because I think they were also concerned about the fire hazard. And went through a whole, when we're out there, they explained the challenges with putting one of those chip fires out. So anyway, I think, yeah, I'm on board with, I think we have to be thoughtful about it, because I think it's changing culture, and people like to be able to go in there whenever they want, but that's not the norm in the real world, so I think we need to, limit access. And it seems though like people are not dumping anything but wood. It's been pretty good that way.
Yeah, and it's really, primary used by contractors.
Yeah.
So they can, if they were, and this was discussed 2 years ago, this was discussed and it came very close, and the contractors threw a temper tantrum about being limited to the access to it, and then at that point, it, it kind of got stepped away from and hasn't been discussed, but I would fully support closing the doors on it, having some kind of a system. It's, we have, we're putting that expense across every taxpayer when a handful of businesses are utilizing it and receiving that service for free. I just don't think that it's spread even.
And Yarmouth's costs, I remember seeing they issued a new fee schedule and wood waste is pretty expensive. So there's like a small volume and then after that you're okay.
One more point on the air curtain burners, there is a version of them that generates electricity. The wood burning generates electricity. Something happening.
Yeah, so that's all our folks been looking into that. I'm actually, he's very keen to see if we can generate power from the wood waste. And there's actually a pretty significant grant program available, so he's on that, in office free time, but I think it's one of those, Jeff, because I think it could be.
So, Peter, were you and Jeff looking for a vote tonight on these fees, or is this a preliminary discussion?
So the agenda item, is to discuss the fees and then just to update you of any possible, future changes or anticipated things that we could potentially bring in front of you. We have put time and effort into adjusting these fees. And, if the board feels that they're appropriate, I would absolutely, there's a suggested motion in here. The only thing that I would add to it is to include the memo that was emailed you with a couple other additions, but if we can adopt these fees, we can, start charging a little bit more, and just essentially what this does is the consumer that's dropping off that product is paying for it. It's not being spread out across the board on every taxpayer to pay for it.
Are you also suggesting that the motion include the bag, the 30 and the 45 gallon bag, or are we waiting on this?
So that, I think that was just in there for clarity when it said $6 per barrel. What does a barrel mean? Is it a big fish barrel? Is it 45 gallons roughneck barrel? So when people drop off the bags, I think it just gives more clarity. Is it like, this is a 45 gallon contractor size bag. You can fill it if you want, you can not fill it if you want. That's the size bag that is charged $6 versus the smaller 30 gallon.
And that's for construction, for, commercial.
Okay, that's not for residents.
That's not for residents.
Yeah, so like when the store drops off, they get $2 per regular trash that they pay.
Well,
This kind of brings it, splits it up.
right, this would then say all the contractors.
Make a motion that we adopt the proposed motion fees as stated on July 3rd, 2024 draft schedule. The fees, and I recommend the fees go into effect July 6th, 2024.
Does this include the attachment?
And including the attachment.
Thank you.
Is there a second? Second, discussion from the board.
I am amazed at how much it costs to get rid of all of our solid waste. This is one of the biggest epiphanies that I've joined the board. And I think that having it happen so quickly, I'm assuming the public will be very supportive of increasing the fees when they look at the real data, which is how much it costs. So I do have a concern about not involving enough notice for the community. So I don't know are you sure that will work? Do you have some like, pardon me?
We've had a public workshop.
Okay, but I haven't heard it out in the community with, okay.
That's a good point. And Richard,
Yeah. Just to reflect back on the contractors being, hit with fees for their disposal of waste, I think that's not a bad idea to have at all, because contractors essentially put it off onto their customers. And in fact, we just had a big addition put on our house and whatever it costs to get rid of the stuff. I mean, I just thought that was part of the cost of doing business. So the contractors should be the easiest route to hit with this kind of fee, and they have the biggest open waste.
But you understand, they're already paying, it's just an increase in what they're paying.
Yes,
Yeah.
right, yes, but the stuff, I mean, you can go,
Yeah.
it's a different.
And you carry,
I agree with Jane that, people need to know, and I would suggest we adopt this and mail a copy of it to every household on the street. Just in regular mail, it's a cost of postage. Is that a problem?
When we did the fees 2 years ago, Gail was very concerned, because at that point, the fees had not been adjusted in, I think, since we became a town. It might have been that drastic, and she had very similar concerns, and there was very little uproar about it, but yeah, if you,
Well, I mean, I would go with your recommendation about whether or not I think we can put on the town website.
Yep,
obviously.
yep.
You could
Yep.
send that.
Yeah, yep.
But I do think, I agree with Eliza Jane, because we're talking, 4 years from now or whatever. So I think we need to alert people, but I don't expect people will flip out.
comments from the public.
We would need to get 2 new metal fee signs made.
Yes.
For the entrance
Yep.
and inside.
Yes.
That's part of
Yeah.
it. And I think I've told many of you already, everybody likes to talk about the contractors. It's more of the homeowner that they come back and the house has been infested by mice. And you get the spokes, food down sofa, you get the mattresses, you decide to clean out grandma's shed and the barn and the attic. That's the things that create the big bulky waste. Contractors are not near as much as the property owners filling up those construction stuff.
Other, from the public? All right. Motion on the floor, been seconded. All in favor of the motion? None? All right, thank you. Thanks, Jeff and Steve. Moving on to item 24.062 to discuss the select board meetings for the summer and whether to have one meeting a month in July and then August. Would open it up to any comments, Sarah?
Yeah, I think we need 2 meetings. What Vic and I talked about a while back was maybe one of these night meetings, and then maybe picking a different time to try to have a second meeting during the day, and I could try to do, I'm working, I guess, so I could try to, with prior notice, carve out in the morning or something. Or, I think there are opportunities to do it at a different time. I would recommend, I find these night meetings difficult after work, okay? So I would like to try something different with the second meeting and see how it goes. I don't know how other people feel.
Other comments from the board?
I'm good with that.
Yeah.
For the summer, or you talking for the
Yeah,
summer?
just for the month of July, and August, and see what,
See what happens.
Fine, meeting in the morning.
the Yarmouth Finance Committee used to meet in the morning, it was awesome.
Are you thinking weekend morning, weekday morning?
Well, I think for summer, it probably makes sense to do weekday.
Okay.
We don't want to tie up people's weekend.
Other comments from the board? David?
I don't know, I think that might stifle public participation to do it during the workday for most people. Working people, obviously. Wouldn't affect me, but, I'm not sure we have our audience here. As it is tonight, it's usually a lot more than they.
And we have a big audience on YouTube. You know that.
Well, we know that too, but they're not here to speak up either. And I think they'll be on 9 o'clock, they'll be watching a rerun, so to speak.
Yeah. Okay, other comments from the board? Is there a specific motion that anyone wants to make?
Can I,
Consensus.
can I make a comment?
Please.
So we're really talking about 2 meetings,
Right.
that's it. One thing that I do want to mention is there Facilities Committee and Broadband are both looking to do a presentation about where things currently stand with those particular projects. I believe Broadband does, I think that's my understanding. Facilities Committee definitely does. And so I don't disagree. I would love to do a day meeting. But I do hope that the board can still consider the 17th meeting in the evening and accommodate those two boards to do the presentation and maybe have that meeting just be those two presentations. And then in August, have a regular meeting, and then between now and then decide how you want to do the second meeting.
Any thoughts from the board on that, Carol?
I like that idea, and I also like having, our business meeting, we're doing things, and then if we're gonna have workshops, I don't think it works so well to combine with a regular meeting. That we have to do. So I think that model, let's try that. I think that's but maybe have that, second meeting be more of a presentation workshop.
Yeah, there are several workshops and presentations that committees want to do and workshops that the board still needs to have, so.
And I wanted to remind you that the fire chief was asked to meet with the board also. And I don't think that's gonna be a lengthy meeting, but he has asked for that several times, so I told him, I guess it's time to you.
He has, and I believe it was discussed at the facilities committee meeting last night, which I was a little bit missing, the concept of that workshop being combined with the facilities committee workshop. I haven't heard back from Ralph on this, but other people on the facilities committee thought that was a good way to go at it. Ralph's comments and presentation be a huge part of what the facilities committee talked about.
Yes.
So what if we meet on August 17th in the evening and restrict July 17th in the evening and restrict it to just those two workshops unless some emergency business item comes up. And then we'll meet our first Wednesday in August. And the one thing we could do on the 17th is talk about it. By then we'll know more about it. Does that approach make sense?
Yeah.
Don't need to vote on that, maybe again.
I don't think you need to vote on it. I mean, the board is obligated to post a meeting a minimum of 3 days in advance. If we're doing that, I think that covers it. I don't think there's a motion needed.
There's no motion, but any comments on the vote? Jane?
Would that mean a cut and pay?
So,
Would that mean a cut and pay?
pay for the select board? Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Always looking to save that. Okay. Knock that item off, and,
I think we should get a rate, because historically, there's only been one meeting.
to, item 24-063, to discuss the retirement of the town of Cumberland manager, Bill Shane, and take any necessary action. Just as a refresher for you folks who are new to the board, when Matt Tupper retired, we, voted to give him a gift of a couple of coffee cups from the Historical Society that have Shabbat on them. And knowing that he likes to boat out to Shabbat and go to the hotel and get certificate for his dinner at the hotel. And it was greatly appreciated. We have talked about this on the prior board, but decided to wait until the new board was in place and the new budget was in place. So, any thoughts from the board on that topic? Sure.
I think, something similar in terms of the gifts, but I wonder if we couldn't have a card somewhere that, or something that, because Bill, Bill was very instrumental in during succession, made it possible, frankly. And, I think there are a lot of members in the community who might want to say something. So, and I think that's sort of simple and, I'm not sure what it would look like. I would be happy to buy something that would work for comments, and maybe leave it as a little bit.
What do you think, Nika?
You're looking like you don't.
No, I do. I'm just, my mind is, I mean, I think honestly, if we can get just a simple, nice, like leatherback or whatever book, like a card stock almost material, and yeah, and put out a text alert that it's available wherever, and people can sign until this date, and then that's, yeah, I think that's fine.
Because people, I just participated in a retirement, people did it online, but if they did some kind of wall, you know, it just wasn't as.
Yeah.
I think a book, I think, you know, when you don't know a lot of the people on it, I think it would be fun.
Yep,
So,
some people probably write
nice
nice.
picture book of passed away. While cards, playing card stuff is good, it might be livelier if people are signing in a.
how about if I come back with a plan? Because I think something like that, the multiple pages where people can sign, I think maybe making a book with maybe images of Shabig, I think that would be simple, inexpensive.
You can make something like that on Shutterfly,
Shutterfly.
put 100 pictures of Shabig, and then have, you know, have people write.
Half pages are white, half
Yeah.
pages,
So,
all Catherine, you know.
yeah,
Is it okay with the board? We probably need to vote on this and talk about where the money will come from, but to move forward,
I-
we're purchasing a couple of coffee cups.
I have a suggested motion for you in the memo.
Yeah,
I'm good with that.
we should have put it to people, topic near to us. Yeah.
if somebody want to make a motion, like, make a motion.
You just need to put a dollar value in it in terms of what you're thinking.
And I guess I have to do it too.
How much was it last?
Not to exceed $300.
Some,
Yeah, that's fine.
So go for it.
Big money.
I make a motion to authorize the town administrator to spend up to $300 from select board contingency 8,300 to 3,160, the purpose of purchasing retirement gifts for village.
Is there a second? Second by David Hill. Is there discussion on the board? Discussion from the public? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, unanimous. Thank
Thanks
you.
for being so.
Trying to make them simpler.
Okay, next item, to discuss the town tower agreement. The town tower project agreement between the town of Cumberland, Yarmouth, and should be to take any necessary action. The background on this, enhanced radio communications equipment would be installed on the tower, and a shed would be installed to house some additional equipment, 8x12 shed. It benefits Cumberland and Yarmouth by way of a backhaul that gets at parts of their territory that are not easily covered by their current towers. It benefits Shabig in terms of equipment upgrades, and Cumberland and Yarmouth have graciously offered to pay 40% each of the cost of the project, with the 40-40-20 split on all those relevant costs. So, question to David.
I'd like to make a motion, if I could.
Yep.
To authorize the town administrator to sign a lease of space and co-location agreement as presented between the town of Yarmouth, Cumberland, and Shabik.
Is there a second? Second by Eliza Jane. Discussion on the board. Carol?
Well, I just feel obligated to bring up that I did receive an email from a community member, I was just trying to look it up. Was concerned about, I'm just delivering a message, potential health effects, vision equipment that will be installed on the tower. And I'm not aware of any concerns, any health concerns related to the instrumentation. But I feel like I should, more than I received that.
I know in the past, there have been concerns with the general public, not just today, about microwave communication equipment. I believe this is all radio wave, not microwave in nature, but it's good. Once you consider. Other comments from the board? Comments from the public? Seeing none?
So are we approving this tonight? So has the attorney reviewed it?
It's been reviewed by
Multiple times.
several attorneys, by Cumberland, by Yarmouth, yeah.
So I will say this is microwave,
Oh, it is microwave.
we already have, well, so that is different, it is microwave.
Okay. All right.
I think some of the microwave link is just from Cumberland to, or Yarmouth. Headquarters, to the tower. It's actually being broadcast to the tower.
What's going out, it's not like, it's a microwave receiver.
What covers good little.
It's in the microwave,
So it'll be either a receiver or.
right, so I don't know. And it says it's a receiver, but this one, hard to know, I'm just bringing it up.
Any other comment from the board? Okay, motion on the floor has been seconded, all in favor? Unanimous? Right. Item 24-065, to discuss the final report from the ad hoc finance committee and discuss whether to move forward with the formation of a finance committee and to take any necessary action. So, can you come to this?
Yeah, so I kind of worked with the finance committee, her produced a pretty thorough model, they made a presentation, maybe I don't know, if anybody was there, but, they worked pretty hard to try to figure out, so the mission of this finance committee was to decide if we need a finance committee, and if so, what might it look like? And so they did the work to look back at actual analysis, sort of try to understand what other towns have done, and to, you know, kind of look at the structures of various committees. And, I think it's their recommendation that there be a finance, so on the very last page of the memo here on the recommendation, the recommendation is that we form a finance committee with 5 members, 4 of which are registered voters and 1 at large. And this is, you know, important because now we're starting to assign people to it. It includes the select board member as an ex officio non-voting member, the superintendent or school committee as an ex officio non-voting member, and the town administrator as an ex officio non-voting member. So that's in addition to the 5 members. And then, their duties that they recommend for the first year of existence would be to refine the capital inventories, not even the capital plan, just like what are our capital assets. And then draft guidelines and come up with sort of a game plan for how we maintain the capital inventory, which has been a problem since we became a town. And, then sort of coming up with plans about how they would interact with local. And not necessarily make this a permanent committee till after that year, because give them a whole year of working before they decide whether they want to make this a permanent committee, and that would be, you know, they would make a recommendation, select board, if they would decide what to do. So I think they got a lot of people, and they didn't have that meeting. I would say, based on the research we did, finance committees don't necessarily meet monthly. They might meet 3 times a year, and they meet 4 times a year, but they have specific tasks typically, and they do some work in between tasks, and then they meet for decision making, but it's not like a regular standing meeting. And so I think that's one of the things that they mentioned, that, you know, not over meeting is important to get people to stay on it. You also have to be careful when you appoint members that they don't have a specific agenda, that, you know, that happens in some communities where people, you know, want to control taxes, and so that's what. And sort of you know, I think it will be very important for the finance committee to understand what their role is, which is advisory, it's not a decision maker. So anyway, my recommendation is we follow through with this. We did have 3 people at the meeting presentation that volunteered to serve on the committee right then. So, I mean, that was like a surprise. So I think we definitely should move forward, and that's my recommendation.
I think I heard there was a 4th person.
Probably. It could be, but I don't think we'll have trouble populating it, and I think their interest is, you know, for the community, not, you know,
Comments from the board, anybody want to make a motion? David?
We have, as we have for other committees, the charge as a document.
We had a charge for this 1-year ad hoc committee, and it was very specific to their task. So, I think we don't have a charge that would be And that's maybe something we should do before.
Excellent.
I wouldn't disagree with that.
Yeah, it should either be done before or in conjunction with the formation of the committee. It should be one of the first things and actually be a prerequisite for them having any authority.
Is the charge contained in the memo perhaps?
Well, maybe in the narrative, but not specifically, it would have to be translated into a chapter.
Yeah, it needs a specific format.
I think the emphasis initially for this group would be, capital.
Does anyone on the board want to take a shot at drafting a charge before our August first, our first Wednesday in August meeting?
I would just suggest the chairman of our finance committee to be charged with that, because he's so good at writing those.
Who's that chairman?
That would be her.
Oh, they're disbanded, they had a one-year appointment, they're.
They,
And Herb's not, I think Herb is, I think Herb told me he's not interested in serving on going forward.
I don't know, but he might be willing to write a charge. I mean, we have the old charge, it's pretty specific, so I think it would be.
I'm happy to work with her and provide recommendations and bring forth something with their recommendations and a charge to the board for the next meeting.
But in terms of the CDC, would it be okay to approve the creation of the finance committee tonight? I mean, I think Herb gives very good, recommendations on the purview board, so I'd be comfortable saying that's what's going on.
If the board wants to make a motion approving a finance committee with the recommendations as they're placed in this memorandum, that would allow us to start advertising, but we would want to bring kind of a charge and like a one pager of this is the charge, this is what you're going to be tasked with, and
By the time anybody comes in the full papers, that charge will probably be available.
well, so if anybody pulls papers, those names have to come to you in an executive session for a discussion, and you would have to appoint them.
Yeah, I think the goal would be to get this group up until September. And I would also recommend that we approve the committee application form. I kind of modified one for the climate action team. And so I think the form we have is kind of not the best. So I will
Send it over.
I would send what I.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll
Yeah, we
send
don't
you-
have any specific requirement or calculation of how they need to be. We just have what we have and we just add a new committee to it when we have to, but if we want to improve it, there's no reason why we can't.
Yeah, so I would send that, but I personally think if we could approve it tonight, I think we get the wheels in motion and then maybe have a committee by September.
Does anyone care to move it?
I make a motion that we approve the creation of a finance committee contingent upon Vika, the town administrator, working, let's see. That we approve a finance committee. And then contingent on, the town administrator, working with the recommendations in a memo and, running it by her for,
Good, second.
Second.
Second by David, motion by Carol. Discussion from the board? Anyone? Any discussion from the public?
I just wonder if you could go through again who the representatives are, one from the select board. one-
Yeah, so basically 5 members.
Right.
Then in addition to that, the select board has an ex officio non-voting member. The superintendent or his appointee, his or her appointee on the school committee, and then the town administrator. And they wouldn't necessarily attend every meeting, but they would be, included in the loop of all the communication.
Next issue.
From the 4 members, 4 of them were to be residents and 1 was at large.
4 are registered, this is for her, 4 are registered voters, and 1 is an at-large member. So that would allow a summer resident who's not a resident a summer resident who's not a registered voter to participate.
So there's a motion on the floor, there's a second. All those in favor? Unanimous. Well, okay, so this time, any other business items, I believe you have something that has just come in?
Yeah, so under other business, we've received the invoice for the installation of the planks. There was a motion made back in the spring to authorize me as the town administrator to proceed with the installation, not to exceed $5,000 expense. But there wasn't a direct motion as to where that money was gonna be coming out from, and so, I just, before I can pay that bill, I need a motion from the select board authorizing me to expend funds, which my recommendation would be, from one of the reserve accounts.
David?
I'd like to move that, we authorize the town administrator to pay Lionel Plant for the temporary planks from barge, the account barge Lance 9016, not to exceed $5,000.
Is there a second? Second by Richard Hackle. Any discussion from the board?
Just to clarify, that's for labor, not plank, is that right?
For the labor to install them and.
It's $5,000 to install them, have them be there and remove them, so the first is, that's why it's not to exceed 5,000, because we would make the first payment for their installation, second for their removal. And that's all the costs that they're asking for us.
Other questions from the board? Any questions from the public? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous? All right, moving on to communication.
I have several communications that I have to share. If anybody has any communications, if you don't mind sharing them so I can finish writing what I need
I
to do.
will share one, I was informed that, a bunch of our signs have been stolen again, including now the transfer station hours sign was stolen. Yeah. So
That was an expensive one, because it was custom.
for the benefit of the community board members in meetings past, and this is not the first time this has happened, we have, I'm not sure if it's been a vote of the select board or the sense of the select board, but the direction has been that we make a strong statement that whoever is doing this is wasting taxpayer money, and that we will replace the signs in the interest of public safety. And now the transfer station sign, I'm not sure that's a matter of public safety, but it's certainly a worthwhile sign to have up there, so. Any, comments from the board on that topic?
What were the other signs from?
Stop sign.
Makes sense.
We have had one incident and 2 incidents ago, perhaps, went around, one of the board members went around and did an inventory of all the signs. And we've kind of been working on that list. Town administrator has a source for signs that's not over the top expensive, but it's still a waste of money. That's good. Still, community members.
We are gonna be ordering the transfer station hour sign, because that people depend on.
So it sort of, brings up a bigger topic. I mean, we've been very little time on this island, and this is, vandalism at its most basic form. How do we as a town deal with vandalism? Other than making people aware that it's happening and say cost the town money with taxpayer dollars.
You guys, suggestions?
No.
I wouldn't know how much each sign is.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
What is the cost of a stop sign? What is the cost?
Each sign is a different cost depending on what the size, what kind of a sign it is. They vary anywhere from $40 to $100. I think 120 is the more expensive one for the basics.
Stop sign.
Stop, yield,
And
all of
how
the
much
safety
for the
signs.
custom sign with the hours for the transfer?
I believe that one is in a couple $100 range.
I think that's.
The other thing with the signs, though, I think we're residents of Constellation, the missing stop signs are, a public safety problem, because not everybody knows, the road. And one issue was that that's full road there, because they keep yanking that stop. And that's, and that actually was our, male person brought it to our attention too, that she thought it was dangerous. It's not a good thing.
Signs or something.
So the signs that have gone missing, we have already ordered the ones that we didn't have, or, had the Public Works put out few that they did have, and so once we receive those, then we'll just put them back up. We have gone through the process of trying to make them secure, so they just can't rip them out. What they're doing is they're taking a saw and just cutting them down at the base, and so then we're getting complaints from people that it's an unsafe situation because there's a sharp piece of metal sticking out, and so then we have to have Public Works go and yank that out of the ground, so the whole proof in them is they find an alternative way to remove them.
And Public Works is, and the town administrator has gone to some pains to come up with strategies for making them less easily stolen. There are specific kinds of nuts, ways to seal nuts, all that kind of thing. There's always a way to figure it out. It's making it a little bit harder. Moving on, another communication item back from June 18. Member of the public asked if our agenda items in specific related to Venice Code could be made more specific, and it led to a conversation with several people. And one of the results is the annotated explanation of agenda items that you saw in Mika's preparation with her staff of the packet for tonight, and the suggested motions and that kind of thing. So wanted to mention that. Email from Brad Hanson on June 26, quite lengthy. Board did receive copies of it, and if anybody wants a copy of it, they can get it from the town administrator. But it was about Bennett's code and this person's opinions on the law and safety and that kind of thing. I'll go through all these, and then if anybody has any comments, we can come back. And there's quite a few communications in here. The next one I had was from June 28th, and it was several exchanges of emails related to a proposed aquaculture lease off Sunset Landing, and Coastal Waters to some degree took the lead on that, and the town administrator sent a letter off expressing the town's concerns about the location of that lease. Another one on regarding Bennett's that first came to the town administrator with copies to the board on June 3rd, with some comments about the road being widened, bike rack being moved. We already talked about the agreement and something like that. Another email, this one was from Jackie Trask on July 1 regarding safety at the beach, regarding so the rec center had a summer camp that week, it was this week, I believe, and it was adventure camp, if I'm not mistaken, and one of the places they went, it's Aquaculture, right, yeah. One of the places they went was down in Venice, and there were a couple of pictures in the email showing kids and trucks being down there. Vika, do you want to talk about your conversation with the rec center, or is that appropriate?
Yeah, that's fine. So I had received a communication of concern also in terms of children being down there with the photos that had been shared of it kind of being an unsafe situation. And so I called the rec center and spoke to the managing director because I wanted to get an opinion from the people that were down there about what and if they felt unsafe. And just wanted to make sure that there were no children, as it appeared to have implied in the email, that were at harm's way. And the information that I received was when the barge landed, there were lots of parents dropping off. The timing wasn't convenient. The children were all to the side and on the beach when vehicles started driving off the barge. And there was one vehicle that was in the way. One of the parents was dropping a child off and the vehicle was in the way. They were asked to move it, they moved it, but from the perspective of the people that were down there, they did not feel like the children or they were at any risk. The kids were excited to be able to see the large trucks.
The next one, couple of emails regarding degradation of the planks that are temporarily installed at Bennett's for barging. And the suggestion was made that Public Works remove some of the exposed rebar that had cropped up in a few places. Our code officer went and looked and was concerned about how one of the pieces of rebar got created. He had some ideas on that, but so the point is that Public Works did, with permission from Lionel Plant, cut those few pieces of rebar that were exposed, so that they're no longer exposed. That's all for now.
I just have a couple of communications to share. Most of them are relative to Bennett's Cove. Residents sent me several emails. Making point of illegal road widening, requesting that the town take lead on removing the fill and, put in revegetation in there. At this point, I don't feel comfortable, bringing any kind of, recommendation to the board to remove anything down there. As far as the revegetation, I don't know that the town should be jumping to make any of decisions down there right now. And with anything in the grass, I strongly feel that a lot of the damage in that particular area is a result of the storm damage. Public Works has not touched anything. The town has not touched anything. I've also communicated directly through email to make sure that we had a paper trail for it through Lionel Plant, and they confirmed that their crew and their company has not been down there to provide any fill or remove anything. And so there were several communications in reference to that. One also coming from DEP as a result of communication that DEP received, which I forwarded to all of you, and the communications that went back and forth, just answering some of the questions that DEP had in reference to that. Any questions about those?
Well, just one, I think I mentioned this before, but, is it possible that that now land can go down there, the well, the bat, the barge, and the driving? Whatever the appropriate time is offloading. Be down there more frequently than last time. You said he does go down there on occasion, but I mean, obviously the residents are upset. Seems like maybe we could try to improve the situation a little bit by having, law enforcement down there to at least, and maybe after a week, we decide it's not necessary, but that's my recommendation. I think I'm hearing repeatedly that some people feel it's a safety hazard. I feel like we should try to respond to that.
I can communicate with Lionel Plant to see if they have a general idea of time frame, and then maybe communicate that with the sheriff to see if he can make a presence during certain times.
I think that would help, and I think you could maybe just text Bob and let him know.
When she said mailman, Bob.
Oh, we can Bob Mailman, the sheriff.
Richie.
Is there any sense of what Lionel Plant's schedule is? Do we know when they just show up?
It would have to be texting when there's a half hour, something like that.
We have to. We don't have anything.
There's no.
There is no.
The issue that was raised in one of those letters about the trucks sitting down there and not really for hour after hour is something that we've been trying to address for years and years. The idea being that there's really no reason for them to be there. They can be staging somewhere else that's less obtrusive, and then be called down when the barges come to load them. And we're in the process of having these discussions. That's one that is an old one, and it's an easy one to fix. And I really believe that one way or another, we should try to come up with a staging area that doesn't bother anybody. where those trucks can sit and idle all they want for as long as they want.
So we're in communications now, is that something you'd like to discuss as part of a future agenda item, or do you want to wrap it into the overall work you guys are doing?
Agenda item as much as, if in conversation with Lionel Plant, if he could mention that, see if that's got any kind of support, that would be helpful.
Well, I think we would need to say, here's the staging area. One place that's been discussed in the past that is on occasion used as a staging area is the side of the road at the four-way intersection, sort of adjacent to Hank's Scrap Shed. Recently, the Land Trust put up a sign there, sort of indicating parking for those who are gonna walk out to Deer Point. So I think there would need to be some work done to, my thought would be there need to be some work done to determine the parking area.
I think it'd be more appropriate to have it left out the town, parking lot, the town, what do you call
Town office?
it? Town garage.
Public Works.
Town garage is plenty of land down there, and, they could sit and idle as long as they want there. It gets further away, but we do have radios, they have radios, and they can,
How long are the vehicles idle?
they claim to be idling for 2 hours.
Who does? The drivers or the neighbors?
The neighbors are complaining about. And I was down at Jackie Trask's house one time and witnessed that last spring.
Well,
Does the board want to ask the town administrator to raise that concept of remote parking of vehicles until the barge is up? Raise that conversation with Lionel Plant's management?
Yeah.
That the sense of the board?
It would seem to me that vehicles should idle in a place where it's doing the business. If they're delivering gravel, they would maybe idle in that location until they're full, but it seems to me like the barge driver trying to manage when people can get there could be asking them to do it politely, may not be a highly effective way to get positive results. If you just say, please coordinate when your vehicles are idling or getting there, there are no guidelines for that. How do we ask Lionel Plant's captain of the barge to be in charge of that without rules that say
Speaking.
they can't idle?
So for me, it feels like we're gearing from a communication
Right.
more into a discussion. And so if the board wants to have this as a future agenda item, I'm happy to have some preliminary discussions with the barge company and bring it back to you. But I don't want people to think that we're having discussions and making decisions when it's not a posted agenda item. And then it's being a heated topic. I don't feel comfortable having a lengthy discussion about it without being an agenda item.
So I just want to say that David and I did meet briefly about this
So
topic.
we're in communications. Okay.
But it just brings up so much stuff, and these letters came out around the same time. So I would like to see this brought forward as an agenda item. At least around this community.
Other communications.
I have two more that I wanna, communicate. One is relevant to all of this with Bennett's Cove. I had a communication with the code enforcement officer in terms of how we can, with the constant, discussion of illegal road widening, how we can work with that and how we can prevent from any of the trucks widening the road. And so there are some suggestions between the code enforcement officer and I trying to figure out what the procedure, whether any permitting planning board, code enforcement officer would be appropriate to just put up a fencing along the vegetation. So then that way the trucks that are there aren't creeping slowly and slowly. And so that's been communicated with him in reference to responding to some of the emails. So just for the board's knowledge, if you see a fence going up, it's only simply because as a road commissioner, I have gone through the proper process to make sure that that is appropriate, and we're gonna try to find a way to prevent from that space being widened more. The last communication I have is one that has been communicated with the previous board, with the new board. I just want to bring this to the attention of the current board, and it's an email that had been received from the rec center in terms of a cover letter and an MOU for consideration that the members of the rec center had worked on. And so that is something that the board should consider having on a future agenda item for a discussion, and continue those discussions with the rec center about having a finalized MOU that the board brings to the rec center to accept, in reference to all of the funding related discussions that took place back in the fall. In the winter.
Thank you. The other communications from board members, sure.
So a couple things, we just since the last meeting, we did receive a postal program grant. So to be sort of the fiscal agent for our collaboration of islands, and this is primarily for coastal erosion work with a number of communities, Great Diamond, Long Island, Little Diamond, and Flint so far. And I think it's great that we're all working together, and there's been other monies from Castle Bay Alliance and also so there is a program in the third week in July that island specifically for islanders about coastal erosion and efforts to deal with it. So that's part of what the money's going for. So I would encourage board members and community members to participate in that. It is a limited space situation, so if you want to go, you can get involved. You need to register at no cost, but so that information is on that website, and we probably should get it on that website. Then the other grant we just received was a Casco Bay Export Development Grant for $12,000, and that one is basically to do some work, kind of addressing some of the things Mitch mentioned in the orientation, which would be really starting to think about where are we going as a community. And the kind of lens that this is looking through is climate change, because that was sort of the funding mechanism, but I think it's reasonable that we can broaden a little bit, in terms of what a discussion about where we're headed. And so, and then the second part of that grant, probably the second half, would go towards potentially developing some coastal erosion specific ordinances that are sort of yet to be determined what their focus is, but we really aren't very well equipped to deal with some of the challenges we're facing on the erosion side. So anyway, that was, and I talked to the planning board. Of course, the planning board chair is, he's done. So I'm not quite sure what the configuration of the new board is. They don't know yet themselves. So that would be sort of something we being the community would work with the planning board and the code enforcement officer. So Paul's aware of it, the planning board's aware of it, and we have quite a bit of time to implement this. So it's not, we have to do it this year, right away. But anyway, I think that could be helpful. We'll see. Then we also submitted just recently a grant for some additional, the next step in the stone pier work, and that went in. So the good news is there that we kind of got a handle on what would the next phase of work look like, and that was a grant application we submitted that was like a 50-50 split. The state would give us a maximum of 75,000, and our match would be 75. So I don't know when we'll hear about that, but it'll probably be the end of the summer. And then the last communication I had was, I inquired of the DEP. We had a coastal armoring project that was proposed back a year ago, or 9 months ago. And that application was processed, and there were a lot of comments that went back. So then there was a revised application, which consists of just plans, that was submitted. And so they sent me those revised plans at my request. As far as I know, we haven't received them in the town. I have some concerns about that project, and I may be bringing a memo or a letter to the board that I would like the board to consider sending to the DEP as town comments. So And I will forward the revised plans to everybody, so you have them. Right, Sandy Point, right. So I haven't really had a chance to look at it, it's a little unclear what the deadline is for comment, because it sounds like it's hard to know. But anyway, this is sort of a revision to the previous application that I think we should.
Ready? Any other communications for members? All right. Comments from the public? Okay, moving on, oh, okay.
I just wonder if you guys, have a plan maybe later in the summer to update us on Dodge access and so on, but, you know, must be stuff going on in the back.
We're being, yes, that will be, yes. The answer is yes. Yes,
Yes, I'm fine.
can you step up to the,
Okay, sure.
Jane took the strategic advantage of sitting, so she didn't have to stand up every time, so.
Sure, I can learn a lot from you. I believe at the last meeting, you passed a motion to commit $30,000 to an engineer to look at barging at Shabig Island and at Venice Cove. No, is that completely incorrect?
We passed.
You passed it.
Can you explain what the money is actually for here?
We passed a motion, I can't remember verbatim, but basically to hire an engineer and come to evaluate the feasibility of permitting a large.
Feasibility, excuse me. And someone proposed that, why wouldn't we look at the whole island? And I believe you all said you'd address this in the next meeting, or following meeting. So I was just wondering when that would be addressed.
Following meeting, not next meeting.
Okay.
So
I
we,
can comment to that. So since the motion's been made, I have reached out and am still working to try to find an engineering firm.
Mhm.
Once we have that information, I will bring forth that information to the board to continue the discussion and move forward with any of the next steps.
Perfect.
And
Thank you.
I would add that we are making progress. on
Yes.
this.
Thank you all.
thank you. Okay. Next item is to approve the minutes from June 5, 2024. David,
So,
for a second? Second by Richard, any comments on the minutes? All in favor? All five. Items to be placed on a future agenda, in addition to items we've discussed in the past, what I've added tonight are, further discussion regarding Candler's Pier, who owns the pilings, who owns the floats, can we work with the DOT on that, and more work on the hoist, but this is all going to coastal waters first, and then it will become an agenda item after coastal waters comes back, hopefully by our August meeting, early August meeting. And then, the rec center, and I think the only email we received was from the rec center. Is that correct? Yeah, so the rec center memorandum of understanding will be a future agenda item discussion as well.
Have they seen it? Do they have access to it?
No, I haven't forwarded it to them, but I can.
Thank you, sorry.
Yeah.
That's what I like to do. So, as Deacon mentioned in communications, we received from the rec center board a draft proposed memorandum of understanding between the town and the rec center as a follow-up to conversations we had in the budget season, which was as a follow-up to conversations that have gone on for a couple of years about such an MOU. So Deacon will get you guys copies of that MOU and it'll be on the future agenda.
And what should go with that is the other MOU that the town. So there was an MOU, it's an existing MOU.
Yes,
And
Yep.
this is draft.
yeah.
Well, no, it was the final.
But it was final, it never got, it only got signed by one party, is that correct?
Yeah.
That should go to, so people have a full.
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a good idea, yeah.
And then I have a question sort of relative to all that when I went in, so. I think it's okay to ask. You know, there is an online filing system that we have access to, the board has access to some of the files, and so when you can go in and look for projects and find information. When I was looking in Venice in preparation for our recent meeting, I think not everything is there. So, yeah, so I didn't know, you know, how is that getting maintained and should, you know, Bennett's in particular, I feel like we need to kind of get that one up to snuff because so much is happening.
Yeah, so with everything that I'm bringing to you on board meetings is there all the information that's coming current. Long story short, when we signed onto OneDrive and we switched this time last year, we got transitioned one way and then the person that we were working with left and then they transitioned us to a different way. So now we're basically in the middle where some things in SharePoint, some things in OneDrive. And we've worked to try to transition everything. We went over budget and admin budget. Herb has volunteered himself to come into the office and transition everything, but I've been waiting until the new year, so we have the budget, so I can contact them and assign him permission to have access, so he can start.
But you
moving
have the
things.
files that are loaded to the different sites, it's not accessible. Is that, I mean, in other words, have you kept it up to date? Or say that it's just, it's a different folder that we don't access, is that it?
I have several different folders on all the different things. It's just certain things you have access to, certain things you don't. It's just because the transition has been a mess.
She helped me.
Yes, now that we're in fiscal year 25, we've got money. I'm gonna call Ion. I'm gonna get him access. He's gonna be able to log in and start moving everything over so then it's in one location. Cause right now I'm so unorganized with where everything is.
And I haven't been able to access that. And-
Let's not,
Gotcha.
if you can take that up with Nico in a moment.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that covers it.
Well, do we have an executive session?
Yes.
Yes, that covers it for the regular meeting, and, we're gonna get a motion to adjourn this meeting and enter into executive session. Dave?
I would like to move to adjourn this meeting.
Sorry.
Sorry, wait.
We don't adjourn, we make a motion to enter into executive session, we adjourn when we come out.
I go to move into executive session now. Pursuant to, one RSA 6A, personnel